The Thanksgiving holiday is a lot of heartwarming things. Thankfulness, the first Americans, traveling to be with family, a big meal early in the day that sometimes calls for a nap before waking up to eat more. It's heartwarming. Thanksgiving is also a great time to resign, get indicted, promote someone controversial, or release a report that you don't want anyone to read. After all, who's paying attention to the small print in the paper when there's turkeys to stuff and football to be watched? Therefore, it should not be surprising that in today's news there is word of not one, but two Bush administration criminal indictments. A former special assistant to the president named Felipe Sixto, he's just been charged with stealing from a Cuba-related nonprofit while he worked there and after when he worked at the White House. And news of yet another criminal indictment in the Department of the Interior, a guy named Edgar Johnson, charged with taking bribes. If the Department of the Interior is ringing a bell for you, it might be because you committed the phrase snorting meth off a toaster oven to memory the last time we talked about them. The Department of the Interior is the department with the already pornographic-sounding name, where the Inspector General said department staffers were doing drugs with, taking gifts from, and having sex with people from the oil and gas industry they were supposed to be working with, or regulating, or in any case, they were not supposed to be stopping them. Hearing today about yet another Interior Department employee maybe going to the pokey, it got me in kind of a Thanksgiving-y mood. Just in the sense that I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful that the Bush administration is going to be over soon. It's important to look forward, I know. It's important to think about progress and change and things getting better, I know that. But it is also important to be thankful, when the occasion permits, for bad things being left behind. And sometimes it is therefore important, maybe even historically important, to remember in a lot of detail just how bad the bad old times have been. In the hopefully heartwarming spirit of Thanksgiving, then, let us consider just what it is about the administration of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney that makes a lot of people so thankful to see the southbound end of this northbound horse on its way out of town. Starting at the "my boss snorted meth off my toaster oven" Department of the Interior, and keeping just to resignations and indictments here, there is Julie A. McDonald, Deputy Assistant Secretary at the department. She resigned after an internal investigation found that she hooked up lobbyists with government documents they weren't supposed to have. There's Stephen Griles, the #2 guy in the whole department, who got sentenced to 10 months in prison in the Jack Abramoff scandal. Abramoff also took down the Interior Department's Roger Stilwell from the Office of Insular Affairs, Robert Coughlin, chief of the criminal division at the Justice Department, as well as David Safavian, who was chief of staff in the General Services Administration. Now, over at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, there was Lester Crawford, commissioner of the FDA. He abruptly resigned and then pled guilty to conflict of interest charges because he held stock in the companies he was in charge of regulating. Then remember Claude Allen, assistant to the president for domestic policy. Remember him? He also resigned really abruptly when he got busted for a bizarre scheme of ripping off Target stores using their return policy. How about Brian Doyle, deputy press secretary for Homeland Security? He went to prison for a long time. That was that horrible child porn thing, remember? And there was also that other senior Homeland Security guy, Frank Figueroa. He had been the head of Operation Predator, and he ended up getting done for exposing himself to a girl in a mall. John Korsmo, chairman of the Federal Housing Board, he pled guilty to lying about inviting banks he regulated to a fundraiser for a congressional candidate. That cost his wife her job, too. She was deputy chief of staff at the Labor Department. They had a Labor Department in the Bush administration. We sometimes forget that. Then there was Carl Truscott, head of the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. He resigned after he ordered employees of the ATF to help his nephew with a high school video project. Ken Tomlinson, chairman of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, he resigned when it was learned that he was running a horse racing operation out of his office. Dusty Fago, executive director of the CIA, he pled guilty in the Duke Cunningham congressional bribery scandal. Oh, and Janet Rehnquist, remember her? She's the late Supreme Court Chief Justice William Rehnquist's daughter. She resigned as Inspector General at Health and Human Services after allegations that she delayed an audit of Florida's pension fund because presidential brother Jeb Bush asked her to. She said she wanted to spend more time with her family. The Boeing tanker scandal over at the Air Force, that put a senior contracting officer in jail, cost her boss his job, and forced the actual Secretary of the Air Force to resign. And then David Smith, remember that? He was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. He resigned after killing a buffalo and then accepting the corpse as an illegal gift. Wow, originality on that one. President Palin would have totally pardoned him for that. don't you think? You betcha. Philip Cooney, the chief of staff at the White House Council on Environmental Quality, he had to resign after we found out that he revised the scientific reports on global warming to say everything's fine. Exxon took him in after he resigned, poor guy. George Deutsch, a press aide at NASA, he resigned amid allegations that he took it upon himself to keep the government's top climate scientist from talking about that dastardly liberal climate. Thomas Scully, the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, he had to resign after allegations that he pressured the number crunchers to say that the Medicare drug bill would cost less than it was expected to. That was the same department where the chief medical officer, Sean Tunis, was found to have faked the documentation for his medical education. They actually kept him on for months after that, even without a medical license. Their chief medical officer, Bernie Kerik, remember when he was going to be the next Homeland Security Secretary? That was before the indictment and the guilty plea for the gifts and stuff. And of course, Scooter Libby, the vice president's chief of staff, convicted of 4 felony counts in the Valerie Plame scandal. His sentence was commuted by George W. Bush. And lastly, who can forget the president's pal, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, the torture guy? He resigned amid accusations that he lied to Congress about the firing of 9 U.S. attorneys. This is all just this one administration. I didn't even get to Congress. There was a lot to be thankful for in this world. Even in this economy, even with the seriously scary stuff going on around the world, saying goodbye to a federal government with a Rouges Gallery this crowded, call me sappy, but I'm thankful.